Hello everyone, my name is Paul and welcome back to the new news. I hope everyone's having a great day. I hope that everyone made it through. It's been the middle of the week. It's Wednesday, so hope everyone made it over that little hurdle. We're well on our way to the weekend again. Of course, here over at the new news, we are always doing something. We're always trying to make sure that we're putting a little bit of good back into the world. So check out the video description below. There are a ton of links for places, including Ukraine, to support both the war effort, humanitarian efforts in Ukraine and the surrounding countries that are assisting with that. There are different links to go to both the Horn of Africa, both Ethiopia, and into Somalia, and also to Southeast Asia. While the conflict in Ukraine is the main thing going on, obviously it's the main special report we're doing, of course, there are other things still happening in the world, and we can't forget that there are still millions of other people outside of the country of Ukraine that still need our help, regardless of what's going on in the country. So don't forget about those locations as well as we kind of go through what we're going through today. And there has been a pretty interesting amount of information. There's been some pretty interesting developments today. We made a couple ourselves, but we'll get to that in a little bit. So with that, I hope that you guys are enjoying, and we're gonna go dive right into the news without further ado. So going right into the country of Ukraine. So it's been relatively quiet. There haven't been a lot of big developments up here in the north or any of these regions. We immediately move our way into the Eastern Front. And there has been some kind of give and take, some small bits of information that have come out. Mainly, we see more Grad systems firing near Donetsk. And the BM-21 Grad system is basically a Katyusha rocket launcher. The only thing that's changed since when they first started using these in World War II is the truck body that they go on. That's it. Maybe the size of the rockets has increased a little bit. But even some of these systems still fire those smaller Katyushas. I think right now most of them go up to 123 and 152 millimeter Katyushas. But that's just the general gist of how that system works. It's a saturation bombardment weapon. But let's go ahead and take a look at this short clip here. So obviously you can see the Grads firing into the distance. This is something that was coming out tonight. How the Grad system works is it uses those rockets, and it's not a precision weapon. It's considered an MLRS, which is similar to like the US HIMARS, which is also an MLRS. Difference is the type of munitions it uses. The MLRS can put a target on point within, I think, like a meter of where it's supposed to land. The Grads use a completely different ideology. They use a bunch of rockets, and they throw them all at once at the same area, and they saturate the area with explosives. This is one of the reasons why the destruction, when it's used in residential areas, such as Mariupol and Popasna and Rubizne, are so, why it's so destructive. The destruction is immense, because it's not a precision munition. It is a dumb rocket you're firing at a given place, and you're filling that area with explosives. And it also means that there can be, if that lot of explosives is bad, there can be a lot of unexploded munitions, and that's currently what the northern part of Ukraine is dealing with right now. Moving on from that, there seems to be a possibility that more incendiary munitions were used in the city of Avdiivka, or near Avdiivka, I should say. We've taken a look at a couple of these allegations, and I think without being able to go there ourselves, it's going to be a little difficult to confirm, in fact, that these are incendiary munitions, whether it's thermite or white phosphorus. Well, let's go ahead and take a look at this video, and you can determine for yourselves what you think.
А сейчас это сколько метров?
Кто-то из наших. Угу.
So I'm gonna go ahead and move all. So the first thing you want to take a look at when you're thinking of a munition like this is color. Believe it or not, because white phosphorus, which burns about 5,000 degrees Fahrenheit, I believe it's 500 something degrees Celsius, as someone mentioned in the chat yesterday. I think it's like 534 degrees Celsius. Or something like that. I don't know the conversion. I apologize. But anyway, it is extremely hot. It is ridiculously hot. And the metal fragments are, they burn white. Sorry. Apparently that conversion was 2,760 degrees Celsius for our foreign viewers. So I apologize with that. I did not do the conversion myself, but it burns about 5,000 degrees Fahrenheit, and it's extremely hot. It burns bright white. And what this is used for is it creates smoke screens. And that's what it's used for in Western countries. The nickname for it is Willie Pete. But I discussed this yesterday, and it's actually a war crime to use against civilian populations or even infantry. There are guys currently from the U.S. military locked up in Fort Leavenworth for doing this exact same thing in Iraq and Afghanistan and doing something called a shake and bake. But the telltale sign that this could be white phosphorus is not only that white streak we see when it's coming across the sky, if I go back to the beginning of this video, because this blurred out telegram thing that they normally have here that's bouncing around. If you go over here, that white, bright smoke is very telltale that it's a very thick white smoke. That is what you can kind of tell that this is likely white phosphorus. It's used for smoke, but it's not supposed to be used against ground forces, and it appears it might be. Moving on, we see that locals in occupied parts of Donetsk are currently fighting for water. In fact, this is something that we've heard of but doesn't get shown a lot, and that is the fact that within occupied areas, basic resources are very scarce. Those resources are becoming more and more scarce. More of it's being pulled for the military and for conscription, and in other places, damage to just infrastructure itself has shut down electricity, running water, plumbing, heating, gas lines, oil lines, fuel for petrol stations, the whole 9 yards. And we see this here.
Почему это я одна настроение испортила? Я стою, подхожу, а вы это начинаете здесь. А то я не вижу.
Какая ситуация у нас с водой?
Какие люди тут стоят.
В центре Донецка.
Да, центр города. Просто люди за водой. И срач.
Нет, я стою, я не лезла никуда.
And so it's them fighting over the water for like a minute or so. But it shows you kind of the situation that the average civilian in these occupied areas is in. And in areas that have been heavily bombarded. Parts of Kharkiv, parts of Severodonetsk, Rubizhne, whatever's left of the city, Popasna, Marinka, just all of these areas, especially along the front lines, that have had major strikes on their infrastructure, civilian infrastructure, that have left them in this position. And that is a small snapshot of countless Ukrainians across this entire country. We also see something kind of good for the Ukrainian side. We don't know what the cause of this was, but a Russian ammo truck somehow caught fire in a field near Donetsk and just kind of spontaneously combusted. Not quite sure what the cause is. Maybe, once again, it could have been Ukrainians hit it, or with this, I honestly think it's one of those incidents where someone may have been smoking where they shouldn't be smoking, which is right next to live ammunition, which is very, its entire purpose is to catch fire, blow up. So let's go ahead and take a look.
Ебать, блядь! Охуеть! Она с БК была! Пизда!
So as you can see, that Russian truck of ammunition is no more. And as we move further along this front lines here, we can take a hop, skip, and a jump over here into the southern front, and that is near Mariupol, which Azov troops. So the Azov Battalion has been talked about a lot when it comes to Mariupol. What people don't understand is the fact that it's just a battalion in Mariupol. There's multiple battalions within the Azov regiment, and not all of them are in Mariupol itself, just a large contingent of them. And so right here, we found out that there are Azov troops just to this north, or along this southern border here, this conflict front line area. And basically what this tells us is we do know from several weeks ago the fact that there were some small gains in this area. That's why there's a bulge in this lines here, because Ukraine actually has been conducting small counteroffensives within this region. Now that there's a significant amount of Russian troops here, it's that those counteroffensives are a little bit less effective, and they kind of have to dig in and prepare for the onslaught of the Russian horde. But that is kind of the situation along the southern front. In fact, that is the situation in a lot of places. We just don't hear about it. Ukraine is constantly conducting counteroffensives. Basically, every blow that the Russians are giving, the Ukrainians are trying to give it back. And that is generally how this war has been going. It's just not something that's been talked about a lot, except for those major counteroffensives like we see near Kherson, the stuff that's highly publicized. But there are minor stuff going on all the time. And this one right here seems like there was a group of Ukrainian forces who are slowly but surely trying to conduct counteroffensives and push their way towards Mariupol. Now, this isn't something that the Ukrainian government thinks is feasible at this point in the war, because they already have a lot of things to deal with, and Mariupol can essentially be bypassed by Russian forces at this point. The city hasn't fallen. The Azovstal is still there, and we'll get to that here in a moment. But the city itself, they're contained, and that is the important part. Mariupol, for the most part, can be bypassed, and strategically, it's not a major threat to Russian forces. They don't have heavy artillery or anything in there. They have a small force of troops that are concentrated inside of a single location, and they're pinned down. So strategically, Mariupol isn't affecting anything and doing anything for anyone at this point. So there's a lot better pressure points to be trying to hit Russia with. And that's just the unfortunate fact regarding it. But let's take a look here. And there they are in all their glory, the Azovs. And they apparently have conducted some strikes here in this area. That's obviously a destroyed Russian BMP. I don't know which model it is, as the turret has been flung all the way over there. But either way, it's another Russian vehicle destroyed. And as we were speaking on Mariupol, there's been a couple of developments. The first thing is we can see that there is still some minor street fighting outside of the Azovstal. Do not be confused with the announcement that Vladimir Putin announced the other day, where he said we are not going to storm the Azovstal. That is still within the 100% the realm of possibilities, as we've seen denial tactics from the Russian Federation for some time now. And so don't take that off the table, even though Putin said it was. However, the casualty count is likely going to be high if he attempts. However, the Azovstal has been getting shelled continuously since it has been the hard point for Ukrainian forces, and since they have been pressed into this area, the shelling has only increased. It continues every day. It is ongoing as we are talking right now, and that talk of humanitarian corridors is, as much as Russia says it's committed to it, is still not something very likely to come to a full conclusion, to put it mildly. We've seen that happen before with humanitarian corridors here inside of Mariupol. So let's go ahead and take a look at this street battle. Basically, the Russians rolled up some armor, decided that BMP wasn't heavy enough, and brought in a tank. But that does still indicate some minor fighting along the outskirts of the Azovstal. But the heartbreaking thing coming out of the Azovstal today is actually because of a child. Now, there's been a lot of things covering this topic from mainstream media, from places inside of like Poland and Romania, where they talk about children and the trauma of war. And a lot of children, unfortunately, are traumatized because of the war. Out of Mariupol, out of Bucha, Hostomel, Kyiv, anywhere that's been affected, which is the entire country, children are traumatized. Today, there's a drawing from a 6-year-old child inside of the Azovstal that came out today. And it says, adults and kids now know new signs. If gray is barking, rockets are coming. And that is what is written on it, and we'll show it here in a second. But gray is basically a dog that the family adopted when they're fleeing from Russian forces and being pushed back further and further, and now are inside of the Azovstal. So let's go ahead and take a look, and you'll see why we're having this discussion. So that is the picture in its entirety. Now, if I had a 6-year-old child and they were drawing this, I would be very, very concerned. And I think anyone mentally would probably be very concerned, because there's a lot of stuff going on here that most children aren't going to be talking about. But that is the unfortunate reality of the fact that there are still roughly 1,000 civilians that are inside of the Azovstal steelworks. They are trapped in by Russian forces, and they are constantly being shelled, and they have already gone through weeks and weeks and weeks of fighting and shelling and bombing on the part of Russian forces in the city of Mariupol. And so that is the news for Mariupol in this front. And now we get into the Kherson region. And we had a couple things happen here in Kherson. So the first thing today is protests and the beatings continue. And so a large group of citizens inside of Kherson came out and began to protest. Well over 100 of them. And they are protesting two things. One, mistreatment by Russian forces inside of the occupied territories. And two, they are protesting the planned referendum to create the Kherson People's Republic. Basically annexing Kherson as a Russian territory. We have seen massive amount of people leaving this territory for Ukrainian lines. They do it on foot, they do it on bicycle, they do it any way they can. They just don't drive because the Russians won't let them. And we've seen bikes being left behind, and they are continuing to do that. They're continuing to be they're continuing to be brought out by the Ukrainians and taken for treatment. And this crowd today was once again dispersed with tear gas, stun grenades, etc., and at least 4 people were reportedly injured because of this. So let's take a look at that protest. Okay, so not to follow up quickly on that is the fact that Ukrainian strikes occurred inside of Kherson. We do know that they're supposedly hitting the outskirts. However, we know at least one target happened to be the broadcasting tower inside of the city of Kherson, which we have geolocated here. That is the broadcasting tower right next to St. Catherine's Cathedral. And the thing is that it knocked out Russian state TV, basically, across the entire area. And this is confirmed by multiple sources. So we're going to take a look here. First off, this is the Ukrainian volunteer that's been sending us information regarding this, regarding what's been going on near Kherson. And he says, a lot happening. Our artillery is starting some of the outskirts of the city. Air defenses are working, but they aren't shooting everything down. We can see explosions on the ground. That's the first bit of news that came out. Second bit of news is we have a couple of videos of the blast.
Ух ты, блядь.
So, there's the first video of the blast. Here's another. And so the information continues to roll in. Here's all of them. Here's all of the channels on your TV currently in Kherson. Look at all these wonderful channels you have. Station 1, Station 2, Station 3, 4. What about 5? Nope, still nothing. And you know your streaming service doesn't work because you're in a Russian-occupied territory. So unless RIA has internet service and it hasn't been cut by the Russian Federation yet because they're blocked off from everything, I don't think you're going to be able to get any TV tonight. But as this person states, it seems Russian television propaganda is involuntarily off air. So very, 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 very kind of interesting situation going on there. And here's how we got that geolocation they were talking about. They gave us the point there. So, very interesting information coming out of Kherson. And it means that that flow of information is now cut off. Because it takes a long time to build a radio tower for broadcasting to TVs. And that's not something the Russians have a priority to be doing right now, considering the Ukrainians continue to be steaming well on their way towards Kherson in this area, from our understanding. And inside the country of Ukraine, believe it or not, that is it for the day. Just a lot of developments on the southern front. And because of that, we're going to go ahead and we're going to move on because there's a lot of developments internationally. And I've only hit half of this video. Half of this video's title. So trust me, there is more. And we're actually going to start off just across the border in Transnistria, which is within Moldova. It's an unrecognized Russian territory, Russian separatist territory inside of Moldova. It's been there for like 30 years since the fall of the Soviet Union. They are primarily Russian-backed here. In fact, there's Russian troops. And it's the fact that they released footage of the 3 individuals who conducted the rocket attack inside the de facto capital there. But there's also unconfirmed reports of more explosions in the region. We just don't have any footage or anything to go along with that, and we can't confirm that that has happened. But we do know from yesterday that this did occur. So let's go ahead and take a look. So there is no audio from my understanding with this, but you see them pulling out rockets from the back of this SUV here, and there's 3 individuals and the 3 rockets. You just cast it aside. They're essentially fire and forget. They just dump them. They get back in the vehicle. And they leave. So, we still don't know who did this. It's not known who conducted the attack. And there's been talks that it was the FSB. There's been talks that it was separatists in this region and that there's actually some infighting between the two groups, the Russian-backed groups and whatnot. But what it is, it's just a serious escalation on Ukraine's western border. And it's a very serious escalation in Moldova. And it's a serious escalation on the part of another Russian-backed territory with the same essential scenario that has been used for Donetsk, Luhansk, Crimea, the invasion of Ukraine, Kherson, all of these regions. The same ideology, the same thing that was behind this, that is being vocalized by the Kremlin on this. The same thing that happened here in 2014 and then earlier this February. However, we do know that the United States and NATO is responding to this because here in Romania, we see that U.S. forces are spotted en route towards the Ukrainian border. And it is a rather large convoy. It looks like it's a mechanized infantry unit, probably about a company size, maybe a battalion size element. So let's go ahead and take a look.
Ia uitați, oameni buni, ce frumos ne pregătim de pace. Dragi români, mamă, dar câte sunt mâncați așa. American sunt? Băi, ele sunt frumoase, se văd frumos, să moră. Doamne ferește. Cam asta a fost, băieți.
So, a rather large unit heading towards the Ukrainian border there. Do not think that U.S. troops are going to actually go into Ukraine. In fact, that is something that I highly, highly doubt that the U.S. is considering at this point. But there is some pretty good news in Russia, and we're going to go ahead and start off over here in Belgorod, and that's because the weird fires and explosions continue. Yesterday we saw a lot going on in Bryansk. Today we see that there's an ammunition depot just outside of Belgorod that has also caught fire in an unknown circumstance. There's been a lot of rumors flying around. We're not going to address them here because there's not enough facts or anything to really go on other than the fact that this stuff is on fire and or exploding. So for all we know, a Russian soldier once again lit a cigarette in the wrong place at the wrong time, and his commander didn't slap him across the face for it. So we're going to go ahead and take a look here. So there it is in all of its glory, the factory going off, the depot going off. And those first two videos were depicting Russian air defenses were targeting something. Obviously, it could have been a Ukrainian strike. We don't know. But that is kind of the situation there. It could have also been faulty, much like the Iron Dome defense system down in Israel was not too long ago. And something that one of our researchers found today, and this is a very interesting because this was initially posted and then it developed into much more of a story after, aside from the fact of what's going on in and of itself. And this is Krasnoyarsk, and they are all the way over near Siberia. I think they are in Siberia. And their media website stated today from one of the press release, because they update every day that they have a meeting, they release updates on what's going on there. And today they said that they were going to be using or taking grain and food stocks taken by Russian forces in the Kherson region specifically to Russia and using them to supplement their own food insecurities they're suffering throughout the region. Now, first off, there's one other time that this happened in Ukraine's history, and this is called the HOLODOMOR. The HOLODOMOR literally means in Ukrainian death by hunger and overworking, technically, but death by hunger. And it happened between 1932 and 1933, where the grain collectives and the forced food collectives of the Soviet Union caused for millions of people inside the country of Ukraine to die of starvation. There's over 2,500 instances where the Soviet Union actually prosecuted people for cannibalism because the food insecurities were so bad. It was terrible. Millions died of hunger. And it's something that has been talked about. Now, that alone says a lot. However, the Russian government did not appreciate the Krasnoyarsk local government about posting this. Because, let's go ahead. So this is the link I was initially sent for that news thing. And you know what pops up? Just the basic meeting news information. Because that is no longer there. That specific meeting note and information is not there. And this is the official. We can go down here. This is the Internet Projects of the Legislative Assembly of the Krasnoyarsk region. Like, it's copyrighted to them. It's mailed out rue. Like, this is an official government website for them. But this article is gone. However, our very crafty researcher was able to get a copy of this article before it was removed. And here it is. So once again, the Russian government, the federal government there, Putin did not appreciate them openly saying this. And so, but yet here it is, saved in all of its glory, the actual news article before it was deleted. So we do know that Russia's planning to do this, and they're trying to hide the fact that they're doing this. They're refusing to tell anyone, and anyone who slips up, that's getting cut very quickly. In that small window, we were able to get this information. So here it is. It is planned to replenish the fund of agricultural products through supplies from Ukraine. As part of the implementation of the strategy of the state support for the agro-industrial complex of the development of rural areas of the region, the Legislative Assembly Committee of Rural Affairs and Agro-Industrial Policy adopted a resolution initiating the supply of agricultural products from Ukraine. Deputies of the meeting almost unanimously supported the decision to import grain from the Kherson region, which was partially taken under the control of the armed forces of the Russian Federation as part of the special operations in the territory of Ukraine. Not only this, the chairman of the committee, Vladisław, admits that colleagues from other regions will be able to successfully implement such experience in the future. And this goes on to say that after achieving all goals of the military operation in the Russian Federation Ukraine, it will be also possible to increase the volume of supplies for domestic Russian consumers by moving food from other southern regions taken under control. Official press release number 379 of the press service of the Legislative Assembly of the Krasnoyarsk territory. This does not get any better of first source information. Now, if you want more information on the HOLODOMOR itself, there is an entire thing here on Wikipedia. I know for those that want first sources, if you want those first sources, for anyone that does not like Wikipedia but wants to know what the sources are, go down here into the references section if you want to look up into it, if you want to find books on it and really dive deep. a lot of different things. It's a lot of things are contemplated regarding this. It's some places call it a genocide, other places don't. Official statements have been signed by a bunch of different places. However, academics are still debating if it was purposeful or not. But regardless of what it was and how or why it happened, it was still a very huge tragedy that most people are in agreement was man-made and could have been prevented. So there you go, straight from the horse's mouth, out of Russia. They're those reports we heard about them stealing grain, it's true. There you go, straight from the Russian government. And so we move on, and that's because the UK to deliver Brimstone class missiles. So it's a very, very cool system. It's similar to the Hellfire missile, for those that get the reference for the Brimstone class. The US uses Hellfires, which are basically tow missiles that are onboard aircraft. The United Kingdom uses Brimstone, and they're being sent to Ukraine. They're air-to-ground missile systems, and what they're good at doing is they home in on your target, which means it's very highly accurate for moving targets specifically. Because a lot of those missile systems, their guidance requires really the unit to be moving slowly or stationary. So then we can see that here. And there you go. That's a Brimstone missile. Very similar to the Hellfire. And as we move further south here and into Turkey, Russia and the United States had a prisoner exchange. Tyler Reed, he's an American citizen. He's been arrested and he's been gone through the ringer in Russia. He's also a U.S. Marine, but he was traded for the Russian pilot Konstantin Yoroshenko. They basically did this prisoner swap in Turkey today, and Tyler Reed's currently ongoing medical evaluation and treatment, and his family is asking for privacy. They say he will talk in his own time about his experiences, but they would like privacy during this time, and I can't say I want anything else for him either, because they deserve that privacy at this point. They just got their son back. But we did get that from Reuters. It's getting highly reported here. We'll take a look at the Twitter feed from Reuters here.
In a surprise prisoner swap, former U.S. Marine Trevor Reed, who was detained in Russia since 2019, has been released. Russian pilot Konstantin Yoroshenko, who was serving a 20-year sentence in the United States for conspiracy to smuggle cocaine, was released in return. The swap, which U.S. officials have said was a result of months of hard and careful work, comes as U.S.-Russia relations are at their worst in decades. Officials said the talks that led to Reed's release strictly focused on securing his freedom and was not the start of a broader diplomatic conversation.
So we'll go ahead and cut that there. So very, very, very good information there. And very good news. I'm very happy for him and his family that he was able to get released. And over here in Armenia, as we start to move more towards the Middle East here, protests in Armenia have begun. The protests were actually launched by opposition parties on Monday. And this is in advance because there's been a lot of... Basically, Armenia and Azerbaijan have never gone into a formal peace. And currently, there's still a lot of tensions between them, but both governments are basically going and having these peace agreements. And right now, they are essentially, the government is expecting to basically lay down and take all of the concessions that Azerbaijan is proposing. So, and the people are not very happy about this. And upwards of 18 protesters were actually arrested by riot police, and they had to forcibly unblock the streets there. So, but we do have some video coming out from this location. So 18 arrested today there in Armenia. And as we go further south, we roll into Syria. And believe it or not, we don't have anything regarding the Kurds and the Islamic State in Syria, which is the normal kind of deal there. It's the Israelis apparently had airstrikes in, and the main target was the Damascus International Airport, which is in the capital. There are other reports that they were targeting other locations and other positions of Syrian government forces. At least 4 soldiers are reportedly killed. Several more have been wounded, and this is across all of those locations. But we do have some stuff coming out of there. This wouldn't be the first time Israel conducted strikes on Syria. In fact, they did it as part of the coalition when the Assad regime used chemical weapons against his own people. And that was back in 2016-ish. So let's take a look here. Once again, I apologize for some of the quality of the video. It's not always the best. Got another one here. So air defense systems trying to do whatever they can to shoot down the incoming aircraft. And as we move further over here and into Afghanistan, there's a couple little bits of news here. And that's because miners were killed in Afghanistan. About 5 of them were killed in a coal mine after they were robbed by unidentified gunmen. There is no photos or anything regarding this incident. This is what's reportedly happening according to local officials, and this is in Samagan province of Afghanistan, which is up here, kind of towards that Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan area, up closer to the Mazir-i-Sharif, and no group has yet taken responsibility, so we don't know who's behind this. And as we move further south here into Kabul, we can see that many people, including children, are currently starving to death. So once the Taliban took over the country of Afghanistan and reestablished the caliphate, what they ended up doing is that their economy, which already was in a poor state to begin with due to corruption and a number of other issues, being a poor country and just in general, what ended up happening is the economy essentially almost collapsed in Afghanistan. It almost collapsed entirely, and we've reported on the economic crisis before, but people are starving to death at this point. We've seen them sell off children and family members, and now they're starving to death. And we've even seen people, like today, passing out bread to people on the streets from the local stockpiles that they have. So as you can see, this just shows desperation in what's going on there in Afghanistan. And it's something that, considering all the violence and the tensions with the Taliban, and to an extent suppression of reporting in Afghanistan, there's very limited information on the ongoing crisis. We do know that they're having multilateral conversations with other nations, including Pakistan and China, regarding relationships, building an economic, political, and military relationship with them. But we don't know how far those talks have gone this far. As we move over into Nigeria, there's only one bit of information. That's because Nigerian troops did attack the Islamic State today. They attacked a group of militants and successfully eliminated 10 of them in a clash. And at that location, they ended up capturing vehicles, including motorcycles, weapons, ammunition, IEDs, and communications hardware. This comes after a recent stretch of Islamic State attacks against government forces and civilian targets as well. So we actually have a photo here of some of the captured materials. So always good to see that. Always good to see the Nigerians hitting back and seeing anyone hit back against the Islamic State. And so we move over into North America. And this is because Pentagon spokesperson John Kirby, former Admiral John Kirby, announced that over half of the more than 90 promised M777 howitzers, which are 155 millimeter howitzers, have arrived in the country of Ukraine. So that support continues to flow into the country. They are continually sending weapons, supplies, ammunition, tanks. I mean, if they can send it, they're sending it at this point. And every single day, this goes back more and more into the conversation of every single day that this war continues, Russia is getting weaker, Ukraine is getting stronger, and Ukraine, without being part of NATO, is building a NATO force. We've seen Leopard tanks at this point that may or may not be going to Ukraine. We know that Gepard anti-air platforms, which are tanks with anti-air systems on them, are going to Ukraine. That was confirmed by Germany. We know that they're sending 155 howitzers, which is NATO caliber weapons. So they're sending the drones. The Bayraktar TB2s are Turkish. The hunter killer drones, Switchblades. The Switchblades are American. So every single day that this war continues, Ukraine is getting stronger militarily. They're having much more modern and reliable equipment, shifting away from old Soviet stockpiles, because the old Soviet stockpiles in other countries have run out. So now it's time to send all that new stuff that we have to train them on. Over 50 Ukrainians have been trained by advisors in foreign countries in order to teach other troops inside of Ukraine to work and use these artillery batteries effectively. So they have been American and NATO trained to use these. So they know how to use them now, and they can actually put them into use. And so we can see here kind of that breakdown. Also, the Pentagon said that it has an appropriate strategic nuclear deterrent in place. There's been a lot of saber rattling from Russia regarding its nuclear arsenal, and that the U.S. needs to leave and stop interfering with what's going on in Ukraine, as well as all Western countries. Some people are making a lot of speculations off of that. A lot of people are scared. A lot of people are upset. A lot of people think we should jump into it and go ahead and get it over with. I don't think anyone should be taking a standpoint. I think there's a lot. Every country has a lot of different things they can do. There are a lot of options. Not all of them we necessarily know about. There has to be some kind of conversations happening behind closed doors. And I can tell you from personal experience that there are always a lot of options that not everyone talks about that allows everyone to kind of mitigate disaster on a larger scale. So I'm sure not all of those steps have been exhausted, considering the West and Russia are not at war yet. So, and I'm sure that those are continuing and that more and more options are opening up every single day. So I wouldn't get too worried about the saber rattling. Everyone has everyone has to keep a face at some point, and it seems like that's what Putin is doing. And here we are again. And these are the 155s. This is the M777. It's a towed artillery piece. It is very portable. It's very I wouldn't say it's simple to use. It's an artillery piece. It's very complicated, but it is effective, and it's been used by the U.S. for several decades now at this point. It's the main artillery piece for the United States and for a lot of NATO countries, and it's the standard caliber. And finally, to wrap up the news for the night, we can see the holograms are a thing now. I did not know this. I heard that they were in the works. But holograms are a thing that's called holotransporters and holoportation. And technically it's been used for several years, apparently. So this news came out very recently. I believe it was on the 8th. And what it is basically NASA is allowing for surgeons to talk with astronauts in space using these holograms, essentially. It looks really cool. They basically use a Kinect, and they're able to, they have devices to turn it into a hologram, essentially. They call it holoportation. And they can have two-way conversations with live images. And this is at the International Space Station. So cool. Apparently, Microsoft's been doing this since 2016 for extreme and remote environments. And it's cool, because I didn't know this thing even existed. I don't know how else to say it. There it is. I mean, it's not a great image, but I mean, holograms have been out for, well, I found out today that they were a thing, so I thought it was sci-fi. I thought it was something you saw out of, like, Star Wars. It's cool. I mean, I don't know how else to describe it. He's even got kind of that blue tint thing going. That's pretty sweet. And like, this is an entire group of people. So this is cool. Once again, apparently Microsoft's been using this stuff since 2016. I didn't know that, but I'd really like to see something like this go mainstream in the future and be used more widely in commercial use, because I think it'd be cool. So, really cool to see that. And we are getting this, of course, from NASA. So, very, very cool. Very, very cool indeed. And this apparently happened back in October, so it is kind of old news. But we always want to end on a cool note. And once again, today is the day that I learned that this was a thing, and I had to share this with the world. So I hope you enjoyed that. Hopefully maybe one day we'll be able to see all of us in a hologram. But that is it for the news across the world. I know it's going to be a little bit shorter a stream tonight. It was kind of a 2-hour stream yesterday, however, and there was a lot of stuff that went into it. So I know I go a little bit in depth on a lot of these topics, and I think a lot of people are hearing a lot of things from mainstream media news. And I don't pretend to be an expert. I'm not an expert on anything but how to blow up tanks. That's about the only thing I'm an expert in. And that is a very limited scope of the world and the war and everything else. So, but I do have a little bit of an understanding, especially with stuff that goes on in the Middle East and, you know, this kind of stuff that's being sent into a war zone and the thoughts of, you know, small unit commanders on the ground and some of those considerations. And I think it's important that someone who's just kind of the average person that has that perspective can give something to it that isn't some general talking on another mainstream media news site and saying, well, Putin is thinking this and doing that, and we should be looking at our own nuclear arsenal. And so I'm not here to fearmonger. I think that there is probably a lot of that, and I think that there's, to some extent, is there some concerns? Certainly, but I don't think it's something that we need to be too worried about. So with that addressed, it's time to wrap up for the night. So please check out the video description below. Please check out the humanitarian efforts going on across the globe, not just in Ukraine, but the Horn of Africa, Ethiopia, Somalia, and in Southeast Asia, Indonesia, Thailand, Vietnam, the Philippines. And if you have more, please join us on the Discord community. The link's also in the description. And give us more links. Give us more places that we can give money and help support people around the world. Not just in Ukraine, but all over the world. And on crises going on right now. Because Ukraine's not the only place with the crisis. There are plenty of others. And there's millions of people that could use our help. There's enough bad going on in the world. Let's put a little bit of it, put a little bit good back into it. And with that, I hope that you guys all have a great night. I hope that you're safe, that your family is safe, that your friends are safe, and that they continue to stay safe. And hopefully, we will see you tomorrow. And if you can't give a lot, give a little. If you can't give a little or anything at all, then give the video a like and subscribe. That way we can reach more people and we can start building these fundraisers and bringing more money into these organizations. So with that, have a great night, everyone. Talk to you later. Bye.